Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 371, Ho-Oh has arrived. The sky was overcast. In Lance's eyes, it had been gray for a long time. He had always believed so firmly in his ideals. But now, he couldn't even defeat a handful of his juniors. How was he supposed to fulfill his dreams? Or, was he simply wrong all along? Why else would he lose? Cold rain pelted down from the heavens. Not far off, Giovanni's group of 5 watched Lance, who now knelt in the mud, utterly defeated. Red and the others remained silent. No one stepped forward. Any words right now would feel like mockery or pity, perhaps both. Even Giovanni's gaze carried a hint of complexity as he looked at the fallen Dragon Master. Maybe, in this broken Lance, he saw a reflection of his own past self. Tap. 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 Footsteps cut through the rain and stopped right in front of Lance. Lance slowly raised his head, his lifeless eyes settling on the man before him. Dylan. Lance. A ripple passed through Lance's gaze as he looked up at his junior. Lance, you lost. Dylan sighed softly, voice low as he looked upon the once glorious Dragon Master of Kanto. I lost. Lance's lips were drawn tight, eyes shut. He had lost. And not even to Dylan. Maybe he really had been wrong. The Battle of Cerise Island was officially over with Lance's defeat. As the scheduled time arrived, the Officer Jenny unit dispatched by Chairman Goodshow arrived by boat. Lance, Agatha, and Lorelei did not resist. Lance could have resisted. Zekrom and Lugia still had fight left in them. But this loss had shaken him deeply. His beliefs were crumbling. He was trapped in doubt. Dylan removed the badge energy inside Lugia, clearing its mind. Lugia, regaining itself, left. Zekrom, after a silent exchange with Lance through their bond, chose to leave as well. Zekrom honestly felt confused. You worked so hard to take me from N, and in the final battle, you had me sit and watch? Then why even bring me here? Still, it understood. Had Zekrom joined the fight, Dylan wouldn't have just stood by. Then it wouldn't have been a battle at all. Bruno, meanwhile, had always been undercover. Naturally, his treatment was very different. He was now lounging in the ship's mess hall, happily devouring a meal. And so, the former Kanto Elite Four faction was entirely dismantled. You all did great. At dinner, Dylan raised his glass to the 5 who had fought. Not great, miserable, Leaf muttered, rolling her eyes. She had thought this whole thing would be for show, but Dylan had been the only one pretending. But it was a damn good fight. Blue downed his beer with a satisfied grin. Win or lose, giving it their all had been thrilling. This victory over the former elites is a major contribution. Once we return, you'll all be able to request rewards from the chairman. He won't be stingy, Dylan said with a smile that wasn't subtle in the slightest. The former elites were every bit as dangerous as Team Rocket had been. Their defeat couldn't be publicly acknowledged, but the accomplishments were real. Goodshow would definitely reward them handsomely. Hey, Jim bro, what's going to happen to Lance and the others? Celine asked, sipping juice curiously. Who knows? But knowing the chairman, if they're willing to come back, he probably won't say no. Dylan shrugged. No matter what they'd been planning, they hadn't actually gone through with it yet. And no matter how far they'd strayed, Lance and the others had still served the League with honor in the past. The League prided itself on its humanitarian values. If they showed repentance, Goodshow wouldn't hold a grudge. If they come back, wouldn't they be competing with us for the Elite Four seats? Blue frowned, raising a second glass. Could be, Dylan said, glancing at Bruno, who was still stuffing his face. Bruno-senpai, would you challenge us? Celine asked with wide eyes. Eh? Bruno blinked, a little lost. I still need more training. Can't beat you guys yet. Straightforward as always, but the intent was clear. Bruno still had his sights on returning to the Elite Four. In fact, that was probably why he joined the league in the first place, to battle strong trainers. That had always been his dream. TCH, whatever. Anyone who comes, I'll knock him down. Blue said with a cocky tilt of his head. After this battle on Cerise Island, he was sure of it, he was stronger than ever. More competition, huh? Celine rested her chin in her hand, pouting. She wanted to challenge the league too. Actually, from what I've heard, the league plans to establish a separate Johto branch. If Lance and the others truly repent, they'll probably be assigned there, Giovanni added smoothly. For real? Blue looked surprised. He's right. The chairman mentioned it to me too, Dylan nodded. Johto hadn't formed its own league yet because it didn't have an Elite Four. If Lance's crew came back, that problem would be solved. After the battle and a satisfying meal, the group dispersed to rest. Meanwhile, in another room. Leaf, let me introduce you. This is Mr. Price, the gym leader from Mahogany Town. Dylan brought Leaf into the room. Price looked at her with a mixture of guilt and shame. Now that his dream was close to being realized, his heart had begun to shift. Hello, sir. Leaf offered a polite smile despite her confusion. She had a deep-rooted fear of the masked man, but no one had ever known who was under that mask. Not until now. I'm sorry for what I did to you. Price bowed his head from his wheelchair. Leaf blinked in confusion. What are you talking about? She'd spent time in Johto. Of course she knew of Mahogany. But the apology felt ominous. That's right. Price has something important to do. Leaf, remember telling me about your past? Leaf froze. This man, he's the masked man. Leaf's eyes widened in shock, staring at the old man in disbelief. The masked man, her worst nightmare. The one who had taken her away from her family. But this. Normally quick-witted, Leaf was speechless. This frail, wrinkled old man? Him? She clenched her fists, anger flickering in her eyes. She feared the masked man, yes. But she also hated him. He had shattered her childhood. Her breath hitched. Her chest heaved. Dylan gently patted her shoulder, offering silent comfort. The room was silent. After a while, Leaf looked away from Price and toward Dylan. She needed answers. Dylan gave them, telling her everything. So you kidnapped us, to prepare us for catching Shalebi? Leaf asked coldly. Yes, Price answered without evasion. You suffered misfortune, and decided to build your future on others' pain, she spat. I'd do anything, for them, he murmured. I don't want your apology, Leaf said tightly. It's too late. Her past had already been written. But. She turned to Dylan. And in her eyes, there was warmth. Dylan smiled back. So to revive those Lapras, we need Ho-Oh, right? Yes. Only Ho-Oh has the power, Dylan confirmed. Fine. I'll help you. And after this, we're done, Leaf said firmly to Price. She needed closure. Thank you, Price whispered. Leaf didn't answer. She turned to stare out the window. Of all things, her nightmare had been caused by an old man with a broken heart and a dying wish. How absurd. Officer Jenny's ship docked in Vermilion City. Giovanni's group escorted Lance and the others to Indigo Plateau. Meanwhile, Dylan, Leaf, Price, and an excited Celine slipped away into the wilderness. Ho-Oh, come, Leaf said softly, holding out a special rainbow wing, a gift from Ho-Oh itself. It glowed brilliantly. A response. Price remained silent in his wheelchair, stroking the swinub in his lap. With his other hand, he quietly released Delibird. He ordered it to hide nearby. Coo! 10 minutes passed. A radiant rainbow stretched across the sky. A bird of flame and light approached from the distance, wings blazing gold and shimmering in every hue. Ho-oh! So pretty! Celine's eyes sparkled. This was the Ho of Kanto myth, her idol. It came closer, closer. Coo! As it reached them, it let out a long, majestic cry that abruptly cut off. Because it had spotted Price. The moment their eyes met, Ho froze. Even after all these years, it recognized him. Ho-oh, it's been a long time. Price met its gaze. He wasn't wrong. He had once been Hoa's trainer, even if he'd used it for less than noble purposes. Hoa's eyes bulged. And then... Ha! Celine tilted her head, baffled, as Ho turned tail and fled. Wait. Was that a run for your life maneuver? It kinda looked like. Ho was escaping. Chapter 372, Dethroned. Ho was currently cursing internally. You little brat, how dare you screw me over. JPG. It had come with good intentions, wanting to repay a favor. And this was how they used its gift. By summoning that old man? Damn it! Ho deeply regretted it now. Why had it even bothered giving that special feather to the girl? If it hadn't, it would never have seen that human again. Still, it could count itself lucky, its reaction time was top-notch. Wings flapping with desperate urgency, Ho poured all its energy into fleeing. Fighting? Out of the question. There was no way it could win. That had been true years ago, and even more so now. So Ho had only one thought in its divine bird brain: run. Don't look back. Just run. But... a howling storm of snow and ice surged in from behind, aimed squarely at Ho. Kiu. Ho sensed it instantly and let out a furious cry. Sacred, rainbow-colored flames burst around it as it flared its wings to clash with the oncoming blizzard. Fire-type, sacred fire. Blistering heat met frozen fury in a violent mid-air collision. Logically, fire should have had the upper hand, especially sacred fire, from none other than Ho itself. But logic didn't matter here. Not today. In an unexpected twist, the blizzard began overpowering sacred fire, pushing it back. In Hoa's stunned eyes, the icy gale slammed directly into its body. So strong. Celine gasped in awe. Leaf, on the other hand, didn't look surprised at all. Another sharp cry pierced the storm as rainbow flames burst outward once more. Ho flapped out of the snowstorm, glaring furiously at the Delibird behind it. But it knew that wasn't the true threat. Human! Our karma is settled, what more do you want? The furious voice echoed in everyone's minds. Ho was psychic communication, aimed at Price. Ho was well aware that although Leaf had summoned it, the true mastermind was him. This isn't anything sinister, Ho. I just need a favor, Price said, meeting its gaze calmly. No way. Ho rejected him without hesitation. Human, our bond was severed long ago. I am not your Pokemon. I won't commit evil at your bidding. Ho was fuming. It was usually a kind creature, but the worst mistake of its bird life had been partnering with Price, aiding in the kidnapping of innocent children. And now? This man wanted to use it again? Relax. It's nothing like that. I won't ask you to go against your principles, Price said evenly. The flames around Ho flickered as its anger cooled, though its eyes still flashed with suspicion. We shared a history, Ho. Unless absolutely necessary, I'd rather not resort to violence. Price's voice was calm, no longer the extremist he once was. In the past, he might have commanded Delibird to attack and force Ho into submission. Ho glanced at the hovering Delibird. It didn't want to admit it, but it couldn't win that fight. Speak, Ho grumbled. My two partners died in an accident. I want to ask you to bring them back. Price's voice was quiet as he placed the bodies of 2 Lapras in front of him, his gaze heavy with sorrow. Ho-Oh stared, silent. Revive them? Celine gasped, covering her mouth. Indeed, Ho-Oh's most famous legend was that of the Burned Tower, where it had revived 3 unknown Pokémon who became Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. If that tale was true, then Ho-Oh really could bring back the dead. Life and death are part of fate, Ho-Oh said after a long pause. They died, it added somberly, peering at the bodies. That's why I'm asking you to bring them back, Price replied, his eyes now cold and emotionless. He had come too far. He wouldn't accept any more obstacles, not even from Ho-Oh. If Ho-Oh refused, then he'd make it help. Delibird flapped closer, sensing its trainer's intent. The swinub on Price's lap also looked up. A deep, crushing sense of danger weighed down on Ho-Oh. The air went still. Then, after what felt like forever, Ho-Oh gave Price one last long look. Flames of rainbow hue ignited around its body. From now on, you and I are nothing to each other, came its heavy voice. Wings flared, and sacred fire fell from the sky, engulfing the 2 Lapras. Strangely, despite the intense flames, their bodies weren't burned at all. As the fire slowly faded, so did the stillness, and then, one Lapras stirred. Its eyes opened slowly. It raised its head, confused, taking in its surroundings. There, alive again, Celine whispered, eyes wide with shock. Even knowing it was coming, seeing it happen was overwhelming. Once someone dies, that's supposed to be it. No second chances. But Ho-Oh had reversed death, with fire. How absurdly powerful was that? Incredible, Dylan murmured. Ho-Oh might not be the strongest in combat, but this power, it was beyond words. Price's hands trembled. His eyes filled with tears as the Lapras stirred. He had sacrificed everything for this day. For this one goal. And now, his wish had finally come true. The second Lapras also woke. The 2 looked around in confusion before their eyes locked onto Price. Even though he was now old and frail, they recognized him instantly. They swam over, brushing against him affectionately. You're back. You're finally back, Price sobbed. Are all tragic people also infuriating? Leaf murmured, watching the scene. She had hated the masked man. But now she only saw a broken old man who'd lost everything chasing a dream. Ho-Oh, Dylan said, looking up, you really did something good today. Ho-Oh was silent. Its bird eyes flicked between Price and the Lapras. There was something unreadable in them. Maybe even it hadn't expected the depth of Price's feelings. But it still couldn't forget. My part is done. I'm leaving. Wings flared again. It took off. Strictly speaking, helping Price had violated its code. In Ho-Oh's eyes, life and death were sacred. If resurrection were easy, the world would spiral into chaos. Still, sometimes, practicality beat principles. As Ho-Oh vanished into the clouds, Dylan watched it go with a smile. Funny-looking bird. Average in battle. But man, its utility was top tier. They'd probably need it again someday. Price remained locked in an emotional reunion with his Lapras. Dylan didn't disturb him. Instead, he left quietly with Leaf and Celine, heading back to Rhoda City. The crisis with the X-Elite Four was over. The masked man was reformed. Peace had returned to Kanto. Rocket remnants still lingered in Johto, but nothing the League couldn't crush in time. Unbelievably, Kanto's entire underground network had been cleaned out. Of course, the public knew nothing of the truth. As far as they were concerned, Lance and his allies were still part of the League. Bad PR otherwise. Goodshow had already spoken with Dylan over the phone. He would try to persuade Lance and the others to return. Koga and Agatha seemed likely to accept. But Lance. Dylan wasn't hopeful. The battle on Cerise Island had crushed Lance's spirit completely. Still, he hoped. One day, he wanted to face Lance properly with his Ice-type team. Big bro, the Lumios tournament just ended. In the Rota gym's back garden, Dylan was resting under a tree while Lily and Eileen chatted beside him. Oh? Who won? He asked lazily. He didn't really care much about regional tournaments. It was a really pretty and super young girl, Lily said in awe. And not just the tournament. She also challenged the Kalos League, beat the Elite Four, and took down champion Diantha. She's the new Kalos champion. Oh? Dylan opened one eye. So? Diantha got dethroned? Interesting. First champion to fall this year. What's her name? A black-haired girl in a red skirt popped into his mind. Her name's Serena. She just started her journey this year, too. Chapter 373, Master Ball Tier Number 1. Serena, the protagonist of Pokémon X/Y, is known in-game as a serious trainer with a passion for strength. If you choose Callum as the protagonist, Serena appears as your rival. She's the first champion to be dethroned this year, Lily noted, looking over the Kalos region's official update. With Serena's victory over Diantha, Kalos had officially crowned a new champion. That's pretty impressive, Dylan nodded. Though Diantha was no slouch, among the champions, she certainly ranked in the lower half. Good thing Wallace stepped down early, or else May probably would have dethroned him too. That's right, May had already won the Grand Festival and challenged the Hoenn League. Unfortunately, she hadn't managed to defeat Steven. But Dylan was sure, if Wallace had still been champion, that title would have changed hands. Wallace would have had a hard time stopping May's momentum. There's been a lot of promising trainers lately, like in Paldea, where a student just became champion tier, Lily said with wide eyes. Earning that title in Paldea wasn't easy. One had to defeat the Elite Four and the top champion Gita to officially be considered champion tier. That must be the girl they call Blue. That kid's definitely got the potential, Dylan smiled, remembering their brief meeting in Paldea. Her strength was undeniable. But Dylan was sure Gita had gone easy on her. Next year's World Championships are gonna be wild, Dylan mused, reclining with his hands behind his head and gazing up at the clear blue sky. It was shaping up to be one hell of a tournament. He couldn't wait to see who'd make it into the top 8. The next morning, Asha yawned and stretched as she unlocked the doors of the Rota gym. Ha! Grandpa, she blinked at the elderly man in a wheelchair waiting outside. It was none other than Price. But today, Price wore a faint smile. The frigid, untouchable air around him had vanished. Clearly, the revival of his Lapras had brought a profound change. His obsession was gone. Is gym leader Dylan around? He's here. Grandpa, are you here to challenge the gym? She looked curiously at the old man. It was rare to get a challenger this old, especially one in a wheelchair. No, I came to thank him, Price said gently, then looked toward Leaf, who had just stepped out of the building. Leaf paused briefly when she saw him, then walked over naturally. You're done catching up with them? She asked calmly. For me, it felt like decades. For them, just the blink of an eye, Price said softly. I'm sorry, Leaf, he added sincerely. He had done terrible things, and now, looking back, he didn't know how to make up for them. You don't owe me an apology. Maybe this was all fate, Leaf replied quietly, pushing his wheelchair toward the back garden. She had already come to terms with it. And if Price hadn't kidnapped her all those years ago, she wouldn't have met Archer. Or Dylan. Asha tilted her head. Wait, Leaf knew this grandpa? The way they talked seemed pretty personal. In the garden, Dylan was enjoying the breakfast Lily had made. Yo! Didn't expect to see you here, old man. Dylan raised a brow as Leaf wheeled Price over. Champion Dylan, thank you, Price said with a deep bow. No need to be so formal. It's not like I helped for free, Dylan replied casually. If you ever need anything, I won't refuse, Price said earnestly. Now that his wish had been fulfilled, he had no lingering regrets. If Dylan needed him, he'd gladly help. Old man, you ever hear of Alola? Dylan asked thoughtfully. Alola, yes, I've heard of it, Price mused. I've heard they just formed a regional league over there. That was big news. Alola had finally established its own Pokemon League and its first champion was Luzaman. Alola isn't exactly stable. It borders the Ultra space, and Ultra beasts occasionally cross over through the wormholes, Dylan explained. I was hoping you'd consider moving there. I'll handle everything: food, housing, security. That's right, Price was perfect for guarding the Ultra wormholes. Defending against Ultra beasts, huh? Price murmured. He didn't see a problem with that. His wish had been fulfilled. Being a gym leader didn't mean much anymore. And Alola was a famous tropical paradise. Retiring there with his Pokemon didn't sound too bad. No. The Ultra beasts are minor. The real threat is from parallel worlds, Dylan corrected. Price blinked. What had he just said? There's more than one world. Ultra space, being unstable, can connect to alternate universes. Dylan explained how he'd once encountered someone from Rainbow Rocket, a twisted alternate version of Ghetsis who had even captured Zekrom. Intruders, with Zekrom? That's troublesome, Price frowned. Rainbow Rocket? Related to Team Rocket? Leaf rolled her eyes. Troubling? For him? Like any Pokemon's really a threat to this guy. But now she understood Dylan's thinking. Rainbow Rocket was a real threat. The Ultra Recon Squad could monitor Ultra space, sure. But their strength wasn't enough. Price's was. So I'd like you to keep watch there. I've already made preparations. If a serious threat emerges, I'll need you to take them down. Dylan smiled. Someone like Price was far too valuable to just sit around in a gym. Sending him to Alola? Perfect. Got it, Price nodded. If you run into anyone even you can't handle, contact me immediately, Dylan warned. He didn't think Rainbow Rocket's members could best Price, but better safe than sorry. What if Giovanni showed up? I'll go file my retirement from the league. As for Mahogany Gym. Price turned toward Dylan. He couldn't just abandon it, it had been his home for decades. Can you release Archer? Not hard. As the Kanto champion, Dylan had influence. And as long as Archer showed signs of redemption, the league would likely release him. He's not exactly elite tier, but he can handle a gym, Price added. He planned to pass Mahogany Gym down to Archer. In Price's eyes, Archer probably wouldn't reach the top ranks, but being a gym leader suited him just fine. As for Karen, she's strong. You'll probably find a use for her, Price continued. She was still a Dark-type specialist at champion level. Definitely worth utilizing. Dylan's eyes flickered thoughtfully. That night. Indigo Plateau. Chairman's office. How'd it go with Lorelei and Agatha? Dylan asked, sipping his tea. Lorelei's fine. But Agatha has made up her mind to retire, Goodshow sighed. They'd worked together for decades. He was sad to see her go. Well, she is getting old. Letting her retire in peace isn't a bad thing, Dylan replied. I wonder when I'll get to retire, Goodshow grumbled, rubbing his temples. The Johto League is almost ready to launch. Dylan, got anyone else to recommend for Elite Four? Dylan smiled wryly. Chairman, you're putting all your bets on me, huh? Celine's probably not interested in the Johto League, but feel free to ask her. Celine had done okay in the Cerise Island operation, not spectacular, but respectable. With Lorelei and Bruno already likely candidates, Johto still needed 2 more. As for Lance, Goodshow had visited him recently and been shocked. Lance had completely lost his spark. The proud, sharp-edged Dragon Master was gone, replaced by a broken shell. Therapy was ongoing, but recovery would take time. Pity, Goodshow sighed. But I do have a recommendation, Dylan said. Oh? Karen. She's definitely strong enough to be an Elite Four member.
Goodshow raised an eyebrow. Wasn't she with Team Rocket?
She was. But she's left them behind and reached out to me personally. This wasn't entirely true, but Karen had shown no resistance when Dylan suggested the idea.
For her, it might just be something interesting to try. I see. Then I'm not opposed, Goodshow nodded.
Still, Jado was one member short.
And the champion slot? That was still reserved for Lance if he ever recovered.
Let's talk about the World Championships now, Goodshow said, handing Dylan a document. A preliminary ranking from the regional chairman.
Put. Dylan raised an eyebrow.
There he was, right at the top. Master Ball Tier Number 1, Kanto Champion Dylan.
Not surprising, really.
As Kanto's champion and the man who had demolished Leon, being number 1 made sense.
Still. Chairman, can you bump my ranking down? Dylan asked seriously.
Ha? It's no fun if I start at the top.
Who am I supposed to challenge? He looked genuinely disappointed.
The World Championships were supposed to be a fierce climb up the ranks. But if he started at the summit, where was the fun in that? All those teams he'd built, no one to test them on. What a waste.
Chapter 374, White Dragon's Grievances. Well. Goodshow clearly hadn't expected Dylan to say that. Honestly, it caught him completely off guard.
He had wondered if Dylan might be dissatisfied with the draft rankings, but that dissatisfaction, he'd assumed, would be with the rankings of others.
He hadn't imagined Dylan would take issue with his own spot. What's wrong with being number 1? Is it because he can't challenge anyone below him? Seriously?
Dylan, dropping your rank wouldn't be appropriate, Goodshow said, pinching his temples with a sigh.
You're right.
That's the problem with this title, Dylan replied lightly.
He understood perfectly well. As the Kanto champion, of course he'd be placed first. In fact, not just him. This draft ranking put each regional champion in the top slots by default. But Leon's ranked this low? Dylan blinked when he noticed Leon's position. And Lance's only 8th? Dylan stared at the bottom of the ranking sheet, his expression turning odd.
Number 1, Kanto Champion Dylan.
Number 2, Hoenn Champion Steven. Number 3, Sinnoh Champion Cynthia. Number 4, Paldea Top Champion Gita. Number 5, Kalos Champion Diantha. Number 6, Gaylor Champion Leon. Number 7, Unova Champion Alder. Number 8, Kanto's Lance. Leon's performance against you was not great.
We couldn't justify putting him higher, Goodshow said with a shrug. The rankings were drafted by the regional league chairman, based on past records and consensus.
Plus, this list needs some updates. Diantha and Alder have both stepped down.
That's right, Serena had recently dethroned Diantha, and Alder had officially passed the title to Iris.
So, the current Unova champion was Iris. Not that it mattered in the long term.
Once the World Championships began, rankings would shift rapidly. The list was merely a formal placeholder. Still, once the tourney starts, things are gonna get messy, Dylan mused. He could already imagine the chaos that would follow. Leon might have looked weak in their match, but Dylan knew the man wasn't actually weak.
Leon would be out for blood, ready to challenge upward. And Lance.
Even if he was wallowing in defeat now, once he saw himself sitting in 8th place, there was no doubt in Dylan's mind Lance would go on a rampage up the ladder. No matter how broken he seemed now, Lance's pride would not stay buried for long.
What about Alola's champion? Dylan asked curiously.
That would be a young man named Kukui, Goodshow said with a small frown. Alola's league was brand new, and its foreign champion had all been chosen by Kukui himself. Even the locals didn't fully know the power levels of their own Elite Four and champion.
Kukui, huh? You know him? Goodshow raised a brow.
Yeah, he challenged my Rota gym once.
He's talented, definitely champion tier, Dylan replied.
Oh? Then we can probably bump his placement a bit. Goodshow nodded thoughtfully. After all, he was a Lola's champion. The initial draft had to at least reflect that much. If he got beaten later, well, that was his problem. To move Kukui up, though, they'd need to bump someone else down, probably Lance.
But that was fine.
Lance's strength would allow him to fight his way back up. Let's hope more Kanto trainers make it through the qualifiers by the end of next year, Goodshow said sincerely. They already had Dylan at the top, sure, but he hoped other Kanto natives could bring some glory, too. Like Red, for instance. Every other region had new stars rising.
Kanto couldn't fall behind. Don't worry, Chairman. I think your wish will come true, Dylan smiled.
After wrapping up with Goodshow, Dylan headed to a special holding cell for a little visit. Yo Archer, still holding up all right, he called out casually as he stepped in. Inside, Archer and the others were playing cards. The suite now only housed Archer, Proton, Petrol, and Ariana.
Dylan, Archer said blankly. Come on, don't look at me like that. Aren't we close friends? Dylan asked, grinning.
Archer's fake smile was all teeth. When are you finally gonna throw that short freak Char in here with us? Proton muttered, bored out of his mind.
Been busy lately.
Haven't had time to drop by Giotto, Dylan replied with a shrug. But really, the Rocket era is over.
Why not join the league? All three exchanged glances.
This wasn't the first time they'd been pitched the idea. Koga had said the same when he'd visited.
All three had declined. No thanks. It's kind of nice in here.
Food, beds, games. No stress, Proton said with a shrug.
Fair enough.
I'll see about sending Char your way for company. But Petrol, you're coming with me.
Dylan motioned, and the quiet one blinked. Price wants you to take over Mahogany Gym.
From now on, you're its gym leader. Outside the cell, Dylan handed over Petrol's pokeballs and spoke plainly.
Huh? What do you mean, huh? That old man's leaving you an inheritance. You want it or not? Dylan raised an eyebrow. I mean.
Petrol stared at the pokeballs, still struggling to process.
Did that mean Price was done for? You've got what it takes to run a gym. And the masked man era is over. If you're confused about anything, ask Ariana or Price directly. Get ready.
You'll be Mahogany's new gym leader soon.
Dylan shoved a phone into Petrol's hand and patted his shoulder. Okay.
Petrol was still dazed. What the heck happened while he was locked up? How did he go from prisoner to gym leader? Flying above the glowing lights below on the back of Reshiram, Dylan let the wind wash over him. White Dragon flew at a leisurely pace, the warm breeze relaxing and quiet.
Still haven't distributed the power spots yet. Dylan muttered to himself.
Eternatus, the source of Dynamax, could create power spots. And with those in place, trainers using Dynamax bands could access the power.
He planned to install 2 in Kanto, one in Rota Gym, the other at Indigo Plateau.
They were useful tools, boosting battle potential and raising competitiveness. Not just Kanto, he also intended to install them in Hoen's Contest Hall, Sinoa's Lily of the Valley Arena, and other major facilities. But traveling back and forth was a pain.
If only I had Hoopa, Dylan sighed, rubbing his chin. Hoopa, the mischief Pokemon.
There's a saying, the fake god of space is Palkia.
The real one is Hoopa.
In Hoopa's movie, when the spatial structure began collapsing due to too many legends gathering, Palkia's spatial rend was useless.
But Hoopa's rings worked perfectly. Space stable. Safe. Functionally, Hoopa might be the most useful Pokemon ever. With its rings, you could travel anywhere or summon any legendary at will.
If Dylan had Hoopa, Eternatus could install the energy spots in moments. No flying around, just open a ring and go. Guess I'll visit Kalos after the holidays. He had made up his mind. No matter what, he had to see Hoopa for himself.
The movie battle may have been underwhelming, but it was still awesome. Would this world's Hoopa be the same? Hey, White Dragon. You've met Hoopa before, right?
The question came out of nowhere, but Dylan turned to Reshiram. Reshiram's body stiffened immediately, clearly recalling an unpleasant memory.
That awful creature, why are you asking about it? It growled. Let me guess, summoned you with a ring? Dylan raised a brow. Exactly. That thing's a menace. Its rings forcefully teleport you without consent. Reshiram scowled.
Hoopa's chaotic nature, paired with its space-warping rings, made it a headache even for legends.
And worst of all, Hoopa was strong.
Even if Reshiram hated it, there was nothing it could do. 100 years ago, it dragged me, Zekrom, and Regigigas across dimensions.
Just to fight. That thing's insane.
Reshiram vented, clearly frustrated.
It had dealt with all kinds of humans over the centuries, but Hoopa? That thing was just different.
Not only had it disturbed Reshiram's slumber, it summoned them just to brawl.
You like fighting so much? Go pick a fight with Arceus. But no. Worst of all? After it beat them up, it just sent them away. Didn't even let them finish yelling at it. Who does that? Chapter 375, Giovanni and Silver. Just like in the movie.
Dylan listened to Reshiram's complaints and confirmed it silently. It really was exactly the same. In the movie, 100 years ago, Hoopa summoned Black and White Kyurem and Regigigas through its rings to show off, then beat them all in battle. Later, it summoned Kyogre and Groudon, same playbook. But the more it fought, the more chaotic things became. Its overwhelming power began to disrupt the village, until a traveler sealed its might away. That act split Hoopa's power into two forms, its unbound form and the playful, mischievous confined form. It was a fun story, and Dylan had every intention of visiting Kalos sometime soon. He mused on it. According to the movie, Hoopa's sealed power eventually developed a will of its own, one filled with malice and hatred. That evil was terrifying not only because it was part of Hoopa's original strength, but because it could influence the minds of the legendary Pokémon it summoned. Normally, when Hoopa summoned a legendary Pokémon like Reshiram, that legendary would immediately retaliate. After all, no one likes being yanked across dimensions uninvited. But Shadow Hoopa was different. Its overwhelming negativity could bend even legendaries to its will. In the movie, that's clearly what happened to Giratina and Kyurem. They were not in control. After the new year, then. Dylan made up his mind. There were only a few days left this year, and it was best to enjoy the holiday first. As the year wound down, things at the gym grew quiet. Most traveling trainers were heading home for the holidays. Nobody had time to take on the Rota gym right now. And if someone did want a challenge, well, that could wait until next year. Time passed, and Dylan's father and mother arrived from Alola to spend the new year in Rota. It was family time, after all. Lily, aren't you going back to Alola for the holidays? Asha asked innocently. I think I'll stay here with Big Brother and Dad and Mom this year. Lily hesitated for only 2 seconds before making her choice. She loved Alola, of course, but Rota was home now too. And she could always visit Alola next year. My son's amazing. Look at this champion of Kanto. Dylan's father, Ito, practically beamed with pride as he pointed to the framed photo on the wall. He never imagined his son would really become Kanto's champion. It was like a dream. All his years of careful parenting had paid off. Say, Dylan. Now that you're champion, do you still need to run the Rota gym? Ito asked, puzzled. I don't plan to stay champion forever. It's exhausting, Dylan said plainly. Being champion meant responsibilities, and if he kept slacking, even Goodshow would run out of excuses. He much preferred the freedom of being a gym leader. Right. Do what makes you happy. Your mom and I will always support you. As far as Ito was concerned, Dylan had nothing left to prove. He just wanted his son to enjoy life. Later that day. Giovanni? What brings you here?
Dylan blinked as Giovanni walked in, surprised.
Just paying a visit to a colleague, Dylan.
Hope you don't mind? Giovanni smiled lightly. Of course not. Come on in. Viridian and Rhoda aren't far apart. I've been meaning to stop by, but haven't had the time until now.
Giovanni's eyes swept over the interior of the Rhoda gym, beautifully furnished, stylish, welcoming. But then, he froze. His gaze landed on a red-haired boy across the hall, and Giovanni stopped dead in his tracks. This was completely unlike him. In public, Giovanni had always maintained perfect composure.
But this time, he couldn't. Giovanni? Dylan's lips curled into a knowing smile. Giovanni?
He called again, and Giovanni finally snapped back to reality.
Dylan. Giovanni took a deep breath, forcing himself to remain calm.
But his eyes still darted toward the red-haired boy.
Who's that boy with the red hair? Oh, you mean Silver? He's my student. Leaf introduced him.
His background's complicated.
Dylan followed Giovanni's gaze.
The boy noticed their attention and turned toward them, expression puzzled.
Silver.
Silver, this is Giovanni, leader of Viridian Gym and current head of the Kanto Elite Four.
Hello, sir.
The boy stepped forward and gave a polite nod, but his tone was still cool and aloof.
You're impressive. No doubt about it, Giovanni said with a faint, unreadable smile.
Hey, Silver, are you going to Leaf's place for the holidays, or staying here?
I'll stay. Don't want to bother Leaf. Silver shook his head. Dylan smiled. This gym is your home too, you know.
Spend the holiday with us, go get some training in.
Yes. Silver turned and walked away after another polite nod. He knew Dylan genuinely cared for him. Rhoda Gym had become a home he could trust. Giovanni watched his back disappear, emotions flashing through his eyes. He's gifted, Dylan said.
Still too young to travel, but once he starts next year, I hope you'll keep an eye on him.
Giovanni opened his mouth but couldn't speak. Wasn't that what he was supposed to say? Is something wrong, Giovanni? Dylan gave him a perfectly innocent look even though his eyes twinkled with amusement. Nothing. But Dylan, I think we need to talk. Seriously. All right. Let's head out back.
Under the tree in the garden, they sat on a picnic mat. You really know how to enjoy life, Giovanni said, glancing around. The wind rustled the grass. Pokémon played near the lake under a clear blue sky.
It was peaceful. So unlike his world. I believe in living well. It's my life philosophy, Dylan said, biting into an apple.
Is this about Silver? He added casually.
Of course he'd noticed Giovanni's strange behavior.
I figured you'd caught on, Giovanni said, tone serious.
Tell me, what do you know about his past? Not much.
He and Leaf were taken as children, kidnapped by a mysterious Pokémon and brought to Johto.
Leaf escaped this year and came home. She brought Silver to me, and I took him in. He's rough around the edges, sure, but he's got a soft heart, and loads of talent. Giovanni narrowed his eyes. That group. It's gone now, Dylan said. Disbanded. I see. Dylan. Has he ever mentioned his family? He doesn't remember. He was too young. Don't tell me. Silver is your son? Dylan raised an eyebrow, teasing.
Without a word, Giovanni pulled a photo from his coat and handed it over.
Dylan looked and blinked. A younger Giovanni, a red-haired child, and a Sneasel. Wow. I never stopped searching for him. But he was so close all along.
Giovanni's voice was quiet. His heart still hadn't recovered from the shock. It really had been right under his nose.
I'd like to tell him.
I want to acknowledge him, Dylan.
Please. Dylan looked at him carefully. Of course, but there's something you should know. Go ahead. Silver hates criminal organizations. Hates them. He's stubborn. Righteous. Dylan said it gently, but truthfully. Silver loathed Team Rocket. Giovanni might be working with the league now, but who's to say he wouldn't try to revive Rocket someday? I need your promise, Dylan said quietly. If you are planning a comeback, maybe it's best not to tell him at all. He's doing fine here. Silence. Giovanni's eyes darkened.
He struggled, torn between love and ambition.
But finally. I'm a member of the Kanto Elite Four now.
His voice was hoarse.
Yeah.
You are, Dylan said gently.
And I'm sure Silver will be proud of you.
He smiled faintly.
Man, that kid really saved this guy. Now he was curious, if Giovanni entered the World Championships next year, how far could he climb? Chapter 376, You Should Learn From Him. By the way, Giovanni, don't you have a Kangaskhan? Dylan asked, thinking aloud. If he remembered correctly, Giovanni did indeed have a Kangaskhan as one of his mainstays. I do. But I rarely use it. Giovanni blinked.
That was true, it was more of a hidden ace, like his Persian. But unlike Persian, who always accompanied him during his gym leader days, Kangaskhan rarely saw the light of day. Well, now that you can't use your bead drill, you'll need a new ace, Dylan said as he handed over a brilliant megastone.
Kangaskhan's mega evolution is powerful. I think you'll like using it. He smiled. Naturally. Mega Kangaskhan's ability, Parental Bond, was infamous for a reason.
This exclusive ability allowed Mega Kangaskhan to attack twice in one turn, a ridiculous mechanic in any turn-based battle system, let alone Pokémon.
Oh? Giovanni examined the stone with interest. He hadn't seen a Mega Kangaskhan in action before.
I've been thinking about training a new ace lately, actually.
Just haven't decided which one yet.
He turned the stone over thoughtfully. His original plan had been to raise a Tyranitar or Garchomp. Both species were known to have mega evolutions and strong potential.
No need to overthink it, Dylan said, shaking his head.
The World Championships are starting next year.
Starting from scratch now won't cut it.
Sure, Giovanni was a top-tier trainer, and raising a new ace would be faster for him than most, but even then, it couldn't compare to his old Beedrill in a year's time. Pokémon growth takes time, and Giovanni didn't have the same advantages Dylan had.
That's true, Giovanni admitted, frowning slightly.
Originally, he hadn't cared much for the World Championships.
But now, he had found his son. He wanted Silver to be proud. He wanted to stand tall as a father. What, was he supposed to let his kid watch him get humiliated in front of the whole world? No way. Unless you catch Landorus, Dylan added casually.
Landorus, one of the forces of nature from Unova.
A ground/flying type legendary Pokémon. Not quite a god-tier mon, but certainly elite among legendaries. Of course, with Giovanni's strength, he could probably catch Landorus and train it as his new ace. But the real problem was finding it. Even the locals of Unova couldn't find Landorus, let alone an outsider. Landorus, huh? Giovanni molded over. He had heard of it.
As a ground-type enthusiast, of course he was intrigued.
I think I understand. Wait, understand what? Dylan blinked. That wasn't the point at all.
He had meant, train your Kangaskhan, man.
Mega Kangaskhan would be good enough as a stand-in ace. But Giovanni seemed to have taken it another way entirely.
Dylan, you mentioned you could help with my illness, Giovanni said, finally getting to the main reason he'd come to Rota.
Having a flare-up? Yes. Giovanni's expression darkened.
He had refused to die before, he wanted to live to find his son.
Now that he had found Silver, he wanted to live even more.
He still had to make up for all the years lost.
He wanted to be a real father. That's not hard to fix. Dylan looked around, scanning the area. Calyrex, I need you. He opened his phone and messaged a contact labeled King Alone. Soon, a Pokemon with a blooming head and a focused, stern look floated into view, cradling a phone and frowning. Where were you just now? I didn't see you. They were too noisy. It broke my concentration. Calyrex didn't even glance up. Dylan rolled his eyes. Calyrex had recently become obsessed with online chess, all kinds of chess, and it was good. Like, scary good. It could even beat cheaters.
Judging by its furrowed brow, it was likely in the middle of another intense match against some god-tier opponent.
Well, take a moment. Heal Giovanni.
In the Pokemon Adventures manga, Giovanni had turned to Celebi to cure his illness.
Celebi, as a grass-type mythical Pokemon, certainly had the vitality and life force necessary. But Calyrex wasn't inferior in the slightest.
Known as the king of bountiful harvests, Calyrex could make plants bloom and bring prosperity to entire regions with just a wave of its hand. To it, curing an illness was nothing.
Fine.
Calyrex glanced at Giovanni, lifted one hand, and bathed him in glowing green light.
Particles of energy flowed into Giovanni's body. Done.
Without another word, Calyrex floated off again, already back on its phone.
Amazing.
Giovanni flexed his fingers, marveling at the power flowing through him. He hadn't felt this strong since his youth, no, even stronger.
He was truly cured. More than cured. Reinvigorated. Not bad, right? Dylan grinned. Calyrex can be trusted. What even is it? Giovanni stared after the Pokemon. A legendary from Galar.
Used to rule the region, long ago.
Dylan gave him the abridged version. Giovanni let out a low whistle. You never cease to amaze, Dylan. Calyrex had to be incredibly powerful, yet it followed Dylan without question. Giovanni rarely admired anyone. But Dylan? The guy was absurd. How did he do it? Was he born with trainer's charm or something? Just lucky, Dylan chuckled. Now, should I call Silver over? Yes. Giovanni hesitated, clearing his throat. Dylan texted him, come out back. A few minutes later, Silver appeared. Giovanni's face was a little stiff. He was clearly nervous. Teacher, you needed me? Silver asked, puzzled. Not me. Look at this. Dylan handed him the photo. Silver took it. And froze. The red-haired boy in the picture, that was him. The Sneasel was proof. He looked at the man beside the boy Giovanni. Which meant, yes, Silver. Giovanni is your father. Oh. Silver bit his lip and looked down, stunned. This was a lot. I'm sorry, Silver. I've never stopped looking for you, Giovanni said gently, walking over. Dylan quietly stepped away, giving them space. No matter what else had happened, this reunion was a good thing. Silver was getting a family. Giovanni was gaining someone worth protecting. A win-win. Back inside, Dylan flopped onto a couch and started planning.
Aside from Sinnoh and Kalos, he'd visited nearly every region. No rush on Sinnoh, but he'd probably hit Kalos after the new year. The only thing to look forward to next year was the World Championships. Although, since he couldn't challenge anyone early on, it wouldn't be that exciting. If only I could enter under my eyes an alias, but I'd definitely get banned. He clicked his tongue. The championships were supposedly open to all trainers worldwide. But not to Aizen, he was still on the wanted list. Obviously not eligible. A couple hours passed. Giovanni and Silver returned from the garden, both looking more relaxed. Looks like it went well, Dylan teased. Congratulations. Family reunion. Ha ha. Thank you, Dylan. Really? Thank you for looking after Silver all this time. Giovanni bowed, deeply and sincerely. No need to be so formal, Dylan waved it off. I think of him like a little brother. And even if he's got you now,
he's still my student, he's part of Rota Gym.
Silver bit his lip, deeply moved. Then I'll be glad to have him as part of our lives, Giovanni smiled.
Not many could claim to be Dylan's student. He was picky. That's right.
Silver, drop by the gym when you have time. You don't need to specialize in ground types like your dad.
I'll take you to meet Faulkner someday.
He's a flying type master, he knows his stuff.
Learn from him.
Then, when you challenge the Kanto League, you'll have experience beating your old man.
Dylan grinned and patted Silver's shoulder.
After all, Silver had said he wanted to be champion. One day, he'd challenge the Kanto League.
Yes, teacher. Understood. Silver nodded seriously. He trusted Dylan completely.
But he didn't notice the twitch in his father's eye.
You're seriously sending my kid to learn how to beat me? From my lifelong rival? Chapter 377, I Want to See Your Truth. The new year arrived in the blink of an eye. Dylan and his family gathered together for a hearty New Year's Eve dinner, and Ito and his wife were positively beaming. After all, their child had become the champion of Kanto this year. What could bring more pride and joy?
Ito was already patting himself on the back for his foresight.
Thank goodness he'd handed down the Rota Gym to Dylan.
For many trainers, the end of the year held special meaning. Regardless of whether they achieved results or not, the past year was now behind them and a brand new journey would begin tomorrow. At the start of the new year, the Rota Gym was unsurprisingly quiet. Few challengers showed up, which was to be expected. But on the fifth day, a rather unusual group of guests arrived at the gym.
They're here, they're here.
Lily, dressed in a lovely white dress, ran to the door and swung it open.
Actually, there's no need to ring the bell, you can just come right in, huh?
She looked up mid-sentence and froze at the sight before her.
Ahaha, Lily. Long time no see.
Leading the group was the boisterous Alder, who greeted her with a hearty laugh.
Long time no see, Alder. Wait, you're not champion anymore, right? Lily blinked, glancing at the people behind him. There stood the handsome green-haired N, and a young girl in a pink and white dress. Not champion anymore, Alder chuckled. Just here to visit Dylan. I'm not unwelcome, am I? Of course not. Big brother's in the backyard, please, come in. Lily welcomed them and warmly and quickly pulled out her comm device. Big bro, Alder's here to see you. Visitors had been dropping by frequently over the past few days, so she wasn't surprised anymore, but someone like Alder, coming all the way from Unova? That was a first. Whoa, so this is the famous roulette, huh? I've finally seen it in person, Alder muttered as he surveyed the gym and laid eyes on the signature spinning wheel. You're welcome to try it out. Want to give it a spin? Lily asked sweetly. No thanks, I'm too old for that nonsense. I'd never survive against that Dylan guy, Alder waved her off immediately. Even Leon, champion of Gaylor, had been wrecked by Dylan. A retired geezer like him wouldn't stand a chance. You're such a coward, muttered the girl beside him, rolling her eyes. That was Iris, the young girl who had succeeded him as Unova champion. Hee, don't worry, this is just a gym battle. Big brother doesn't go all out for those, Lily giggled. That's what you say, but what if I spin and land on the gold tier with all the legendary Pokemon? Alder scratched his wild hair nervously. He still remembered how that other girl, Lacey, had been scared to tears by Dylan's Kyurem. It's been a while since anyone landed on a legendary team, Lily replied, a little uncertain. Seeing her face, Alder burst into laughter. Alder, what brings you to Kanto all of a sudden? Dylan asked, stepping in with a smile. And, long time no see. And this must be Iris, the new Unova champion. A pleasure to meet you. He greeted N and Iris warmly, already well aware that N had renounced his former ideals and joined the Unova League. Dylan. N's eyes brightened as he looked at him. Iris curiously sized up the man who had become something of a legend even in Unova. Let's just say someone insisted on coming to see you, Alder shrugged helplessly. And it's been a while since I visited Kanto anyway. Oh? Dylan raised a brow and turned his gaze to N. Clearly, he was the one. Zekrom has returned to me. It told me that Lance has fallen. N's demeanor was very different from before.
After leaving Lance, Zekrom had returned to N and informed him of everything that had happened on Cinnabar.
That's right. Lance's ideals were misguided. But you didn't step in. N's eyes locked onto Dylan. In a way, I did, Dylan replied. I restricted Lance's 2 legendary Pokémon.
If Lance had been free to command Zekrom and Lugia in battle, Giovanni and the others would never have stood a chance.
It's not the same. N shook his head. Dylan, I want to battle you. Under the name of a hero.
His tone was solemn as he issued the challenge.
You're serious? Dylan blinked in surprise. N's ideals had changed, yet he still wanted to battle? Wait, come to think of it, they'd never truly fought before. Though they'd crossed paths and clashed, Dylan realized they'd never had a proper battle. Yes. I want to see your truth through battle, Dylan.
N's voice was calm but resolute.
Neither Alder nor Iris was surprised, they clearly knew this was coming. I see. Dylan arched a brow.
In that case, I have no reason to say no, he replied after a moment of thought.
So N wanted to understand him through combat, huh? Ha ha ha, this is gonna be good. A battle between Dylan and N?
I'm all for it, Alder grinned. He didn't expect N to win. Dylan was too strong, but he was excited all the same.
After all, N wasn't weak.
And now that Zekrom had returned to him, they took their places on the battlefield, facing off.
I'll be the referee.
Alder volunteered before Lily could open her mouth.
Fine. She pouted slightly. The match between Trainer Dylan and Trainer N is about to begin. Format, 6 vs 6, full battle. When all 6 Pokémon on one side are unable to battle, the other side wins. Battle, start. The scoreboard lit up. Dylan and N's portraits appeared, and the pointer began to spin. It slowed, and stopped on Dylan. He'd go first. Never thought my first match of the year would be with you, N. Dylan drew a Pokeball and smiled. I've been thinking for a while now, what team should I use against you? But in the end, since you want to understand my truth, then I'll use the one that represents where I truly began as a trainer. N, see for yourself. Hearing that, N's eyes lit up. Dylan's original team? I'll give it my all, he declared. That's what I want to hear. Let's go Glimmera, to the field. Dylan tossed the ball, and a shimmering Pokémon floated out. Its body slowly unfolded like a blooming crystal flower. It was Glimmera. Glimmera, huh? That means Dylan's going with a poison-type team? Alder scratched his chin. Beep Glimmera. Rock/poison type. The or Pokémon. Ability, Toxic Debris.
Moves, Mortal Spin, Sludge Wave, Power Gem, Spiky Shield, Toxic, Stealth Rock.
Description: when sensing danger, it opens its crystalline petals and fires energy beams from its conical body.
Rotom floated beside Lily, reading off the data.
That's right.
If we're talking about Dylan's first team, no doubt it was poison types, came a graceful female voice.
Eileen. You're here. Lily turned to see a woman in a pink dress walk in. Didn't expect Dylan to be battling today, Eileen smiled.
They'd originally planned a camping trip.
Still, watching Dylan battle wasn't a bad way to spend the day. Glimmera, huh, in that case.
And considered carefully before tossing out his own Pokeball.
Clang clang. I'm counting on you.
With a flash, the Steel-type Pokémon floated into position.
Beep cling clang. Steel-type. The Gear Pokémon. Ability, plus. Moves, Electric Terrain, Zap Cannon, Lock On, Gear Grind, Gear Up, Shift Gear.
Description: the red core acts as an energy tank, releasing stored power through its spiked tips.
A solid counter, steel types couldn't be poisoned. N had clearly come prepared. You're using pokeballs now? Dylan asked curiously.
In the past, N refused to use them, believing they shackled a Pokemon's freedom.
I was too narrow-minded before, N said with a shake of his head.
Pokeballs are a bridge of friendship between humans and Pokemon.
Freedom isn't limited by a Pokeball alone. Though he still believed some used them poorly, he no longer saw them as inherently bad.
They were symbols of trust, proof that a Pokemon chose to stand beside its trainer. Besides, without them, carrying his closest friends around wasn't exactly practical.
Well said. I can feel it, N, you really have changed. Dylan was genuinely impressed. Then show me. You, recognized by Zekrom, how strong are you now?
His smile curled with challenge.
I will. I'll show you my ideals. N's expression turned serious.
He would fight with everything he had to uncover Dylan's truth. Though they'd clashed before, Zekrom had fled from Kyurem without fighting Dylan's Reshiram. But today he hoped Dylan would use it.
Zekrom wanted to face Reshiram head-on.
He just didn't know if Dylan would grant that wish.
Chapter 378, Is this how Dylan battles?
Glimmera vs Klinklang, not exactly a favorable matchup for champion Dylan.
Iris's bright, eager eyes were fixed on the Pokemon facing off in the arena.
She was incredibly curious about Dylan. After all, he'd taken both of Unova's Dragon Gods and, before leaving, practically wiped out Team Plasma. And shortly after becoming champion of Kanto, he had battled Galar's champion Leon. And completely swept him. Like, a literal shutout. Brutal stuff. As the newly appointed champion of Unova, Iris naturally felt both curious and eager, itching to test herself. As a Dragon-type enthusiast, she held a deep love for dragons, and Dylan was a Dragon-type champion too. Well, okay, technically he was a multi-type trainer, but the league officially had him listed as Dragon-type.
That counted. Once N's done, it's my turn next.
Iris clenched her pink-gloved fists, burning with determination. After all, the World Championship was coming up this year, and like it or not, she and Dylan were rivals now. Getting familiar with his strength early was just good scouting.
That's right.
Poison has no effect on Klinklang, and rock is also resisted. Glimmera really isn't a good pick here, Alder said thoughtfully, stroking his chin. And Klinklang, being pure steel, was actually quite a solid Pokemon.
Sure, it looked basic and sounded like a low-tier name.
But in-game, its base stat total was a respectable 520, definitely high tier.
Besides its lackluster HP and special attack, it was solid all around. On the battlefield. Come back, Glimmera. Dylan decisively recalled his Pokemon. This wasn't a gym match, he was free to switch. If this Glimmera had the corrosion ability, he might have kept it in. But with toxic debris? No way, not a good matchup. Salazzle. He sent out his second Pokemon.
A flash of white light, and a sleek, black-scaled lizard hit the field, leaning on her forelimbs.
Narrow, slitted eyes and a crooked smirk gave her an unmistakably sinister vibe. It was Salazzle. A fire/poison type, and with corrosion, I assume? And analyzed her quickly.
His Pokemon knowledge was impeccable. Corrosion, plus fire typing, Salazzle was easily one of the best poison types for dealing with steels.
And pondered briefly before recalling Klinklang and sending out his second choice. Caracosta. I'm counting on you.
A hulking blue turtle with rocky black blue plates and long limbs lumbered onto the field.
Beep Caracosta.
Water/rock type.
Proto-turtle Pokemon. Ability, Solid Rock.
Moves, Shell Smash, Hydro Pump, Rain Dance, Aqua Tail, Crunch, Rock Slide, Stealth Rock. Description: though slower in water, it comes ashore to hunt prey when necessary. A water type this time, another good counter. Reading the data, Eileen smiled slightly.
But thinking type advantage alone would be enough to beat Dylan?
That was wishful thinking. As a gym leader, countering unfavorable matchups was practically Dylan's specialty.
Caracosta, Aqua Jet. Anne made the first move.
Though slow on land, Caracosta had priority moves.
Water energy surged as the turtle prepared to strike. Fake out.
But Salazzle moved even faster, her dark silhouette blurred into a shadow, and she closed in before Caracosta could act.
Smack!
Water burst off Caracosta as it flinched from the hit, stumbling backward in a daze. Normal type move, low damage, but it flinched.
Anne frowned. Toxic. Caracosta. Anne's face changed. Getting poisoned would be a huge problem. Salazzle's throat bulged, she spat a thick stream of deep purple venom.
Whirlpool!
Anne shouted quickly.
Caracosta snapped out of it and summoned a spiraling vortex of water just in time, blocking the sludge. But the swirling, once clear water was quickly tainted purple, cloudy and dangerous.
Anne sighed in relief. He hadn't expected Dylan to open with a fake-out plus toxic combo. Aren't you supposed to be a noble hero of truth or something? Quick reflexes. But Dylan's brow lifted slightly. Caracosta. Anne barked in order. Caracosta hurled the poison whirlpool towards Salazzle. Don't get complacent now, Dylan said with a grin. Salazzle sidestepped with ease, darting toward Caracosta. Aqua Tail. Caracosta's tail surged with water as it lashed out.
Salazzle barely moved, just twisted her body with a mocking look and dodged again. Then, at close range, she unleashed another blast of venom right to Caracosta's face.
Again?
Toxic, Anne muttered, now visibly annoyed, and this time, it landed. Caracosta clawed at its face, trying to wipe off the sludge, but the dark purple poison seeped into its body fast.
A sickly glow pulsed from within. Caracosta winced audibly. This is bad.
That kind of poison is brutal, Alder muttered. Badly poisoned status only got worse over time each turn, the damage would increase.
Right now, Caracosta might just be wincing, but soon? It'd be a lot more than that.
Using Caracosta to counter Salazzle was a good call, N. But you overlooked something. Caracosta's mobility is nothing compared to Salazzle's.
And now it's poisoned. So tell me, how do you plan to stop her? Dylan tilted his head. A poison team?
Anne's brows drew together.
That's right. Poison was my very first attribute team.
I hope you enjoy the charm of these Pokemon, N.
Dylan smiled.
Salazzle's grin widened unnaturally, so sharp it nearly reached her ears.
Genuinely unsettling. Poison's charm? Surf. Anne didn't hesitate, time was ticking. Encore. As Caracosta tried to summon a wave, Salazzle sat up and mockingly clapped her claws together.
A strange light surrounded Caracosta, it was forced to repeat its last move. Caracosta blinked in confusion, trying hard, but no matter what, it couldn't produce surf again.
It glanced helplessly back at N. N. The last move was Aqua Tail.
There was no way Caracosta was fast enough to land that. Asking a sluggish turtle to chase down a slithery lizard?
Toxic spikes. Dylan gave his next order. Salazzle backflipped, then launched a glowing purple orb into the air. Boom! It burst, purple needles scattered across the field, embedding into the ground. Toxic spikes. So this was how Dylan usually battled?
Anne's clear eyes grew a little blank.
This wasn't the kind of passionate clash he had imagined. This was supposed to be a clash between the heroes of truth and ideals. What's wrong, N? Not going to attack?
Seeing him freeze, Dylan tilted his head.
N? Was he seriously asking that?
Just then, Caracosta shuddered again.
The deep purple glow returned. Toxic damage round 2. Venoshock. Dylan struck immediately. Salazzle dashed forward, spraying a jet of acidic venom straight into Caracosta's face.
Already poisoned and caught off guard, the turtle cried out in pain.
Venoshock dealt double damage to poison targets.
Even with resistance to poison, that one stung badly.
Caracosta collapsed, and as it hit the ground, another pulse of purple light flared. Toxic spikes, additional damage. Alder and the others watching couldn't help but wince. Come back, Caracosta. And quickly returned his battered Pokemon. If he waited any longer, Dylan would have had Salazzle follow up.
And, if you can't fight at your best, you might not even get to see Reshiram.
Dylan smiled, ice-focused.
He had included Reshiram in his lineup for this battle with N.
But if N didn't push himself, he might not get that far. Dylan knew N had Zekrom, but that didn't mean Dylan needed a legend to beat him. Power levels aside. Zekrom isn't immune to poison, is it? Even the Dragon of Ideals can get poisoned. Kyogre would approve. Understood.
N nodded solemnly, taking a deep breath to steady himself.
Archeops. Let's go. Chapter 379, as expected of one of my earliest Pokemon. Archeops, I'm counting on you.
As N threw his Pokeball, a shrill, feral cry tore through the air.
A vibrantly feathered Pokemon unfurled. Archeops, I'm counting on you.
As N threw his Pokeball, a shrill, feral cry tore through the air. A vibrantly feathered Pokemon unfurled its wings, hovering before N. It was Archeops.
One of the few Pokemon with the infamous glass cannon trait.
Everyone knew that a Pokemon's strength came from many aspects, but when it came to battling, things became a lot more nuanced.
And one factor that could never be overlooked was abilities.
Most abilities were beneficial, boosting a Pokemon's strengths. Even if some were cryptic, they rarely harmed their user. But there were three glaring exceptions. Archeops, Dylan's expression twisted strangely at the sight of it.
Slaking's Truant, Regigigas' Slow Start, and Archeops' Defeatist, these three were in a league of their own. Not in a good way. Everyone knew about Truant, it forced Slaking to loaf around every other turn. Pure sabotage.
Then there was Slow Start, cutting Regigigas' attack and speed in half for 5 turns after entering battle.
Absolutely debilitating. Regigigas, the mythic giant who created the legendary titans Regirock, Regice, Registeel, and even the OP Regidrago and Regieleki. Yet ironically, it couldn't even make it into ban lists in competitive play. There were even rumors that Slow Start was punishment from Arceus. Dylan made a note to ask Regigigas about it someday. And finally, Defeatist, Archeops' Curse.
Compared to Slaking and Regigigas, Archeops' ability wasn't quite as punishing, but still awful. Defeatist, when HP falls below 50%, Archeops becomes demoralized, its attack and special attack are halved. And Archeops was built entirely around high attack and blistering speed. Once Defeatist kicked in, it was basically done for. Even worse, Archeops had paper-thin defenses. In the games, just sneezing on it was enough to trigger Defeatist. A truly cursed ability. But ironically, in the real world, Archeops actually performed pretty well unlike the other two. See, both Slaking and Archeops were given such handicaps because their base stats were absurdly high. Archeops was no exception. When not hindered by Defeatist, it was incredibly strong, especially in physical offense. Couple that with top-tier speed and solid special attack, and you had a fast, powerful glass cannon perfect for high-speed burst tactics. Beep Archeops. Rock/Flying type. First bird Pokemon. Ability, Defeatist. Moves, Headlong Rush, Uproar, Dragon Claw, Crunch, U-Turn, Rock Slide, Acrobatics. Description, said to be the ancestor of all bird Pokemon. Its wing muscles are still underdeveloped. It must get a running start to fly. A double-edged sword, that one, Alder muttered. But Archeops is really strong. And it's perfect for countering that Salazzle. Iris had a different take. She had a main team Archeops herself, she knew what she was talking about. Salazzle was a fast, special attacking glass cannon. The best way to handle a nimble threat like that was with an even faster, more aggressive attacker. Plus, Archeops had type advantage. True, but Alder still shook his head.
On the battlefield. Archeops, quick attack.
N gave the command sharply. Archeops let out a piercing screech, its eyes gleaming as it dove like a missile, white light trailing behind it.
Sweet scent. A mischievous smile tugged at Dylan's lips.
Salazzle smirked and swiped her claw through the air, releasing a fragrant pink mist, normal type move, sweet scent.
Bang!
Archeops shot straight through the mist and slammed into Salazzle, sending her skidding backward with a grunt.
That hit hurt. Archeops's raw power was nothing to sneeze at.
Salazzle dug her claws into the dirt to steady herself, her slitted eyes narrowing at the flapping bird above.
That damn bird hits like a truck. Didn't use defog? Didn't inherit it, or just trying to KO Salazzle first? Dylan narrowed his eyes slightly.
Archeops could learn defog, and with toxic spikes on the field, it was a valid counter. But maybe it was a calculated risk. Archeops wasn't touching the ground, after all.
Rock slide. Anne called out again.
Archeops shrieked and conjured massive stones, then hurled them down with a powerful flap of its wings.
Dodge. Salazzle twisted and slithered with uncanny agility, weaving between falling rocks. Every single one missed. Salazzle's mobility was simply too high. Anne frowned. It was time to take a gamble. Quick attack.
Archeops dove again with blinding speed.
Evade, Dylan replied calmly.
Salazzle backpedaled into the pink mist of sweet scent, which still lingered in the air.
Archeops closed in fast. Thunder wave. Salazzle crackled with electricity. Anne's eyes narrowed. Archeops. But it was too late. The aroma in the air had dulled Archeops's reaction slightly. Its wings sliced through the mist and it crashed into Salazzle, legs striking her and pinning her to the ground. Salazzle hissed in pain. Her frail defense made even quick attack sting. But the electricity washed over Archeops, paralyzing it mid-action. Archeops's body froze. Its feet remained planted on Salazzle's chest, preventing her from standing. That thunder wave. Archeops still has a shot though. Alder's eyes lit up. Iris nodded excitedly. Salazzle glared, her narrow eyes burning. Earthquake! Anne shouted. 4 times effective. If it hit, Salazzle was done. Archeops recovered, wings flapping as it rose, and slammed back down with a thunderous impact. Salazzle, Dylan called softly. Salazzle tried to twist away, but Archeops was too quick. The earthquake hit squarely. Boom! Salazzle screamed as the shockwave exploded outward. The impact zone quaked violently. A devastating blow. That's one hell of an earthquake, Dylan murmured with admiration. Anne relaxed slightly. Finally, a win. Sure, Archeops was paralyzed, but its offensive power remained formidable. He opened his mouth to speak. But it's still not enough, Dylan said with a grin. Anne blinked, confused, until his expression suddenly changed. As the dust settled, Salazzle lay crumpled under Archeops, seemingly defeated. But suddenly, a black claw clamped around Archeops's leg. Archeops's eyes widened in shock. Salazzle was still conscious, gasping for breath, barely hanging on, but alive. It was as if she'd returned from the dead. Even Archeops looked like it had seen a ghost. Iris was stunned. No way. That was quadruple super effective earthquake. From N's Archeops, no less. How was Salazzle still alive? There's a way, Alder said, eyes narrowing. He glanced toward Dylan. Iris furrowed her brow, then her eyes lit up. Endure, N whispered, already piecing it together. The normal type move that lets the user survive a lethal hit with 1 HP. Salazzle, headlong rush. Dylan gave the command immediately. Salazzle hissed, body glowing white as she threw herself into Archeops with reckless abandon. Archeops! Anne cried. Archeops tried to fly away, but Salazzle held its leg, and the paralysis kicked in. Bam! Salazzle slammed into Archeops like a missile.
Archeops let out a shrill, pained screech as it was sent flying across the field. Headlong rush in the real world, it functioned like a berserk desperation move. The more battered the user, the more devastating the impact.
And Salazzle was hanging on by a thread.
The impact sent Archeops crashing to the ground right into the waiting toxic spikes. Its body glowed a sickly purple as it convulsed in pain.
Then, nothing.
The poison took hold. Archeops collapsed, unconscious.
Silence. The entire gym went still. Everyone was stunned by the sudden turn. Ahem. Archeops is unable to battle. Salazzle wins, Alder finally announced after clearing his throat. Dylan nodded with satisfaction. As expected of one of my earliest Pokémon.
N, on the other hand, looked like he'd just been smacked with a shovel. He stared blankly at his unconscious Archeops, then at the black-scaled lizard across the field.
He'd been one-shot. Was this the kind of battle he had envisioned? Chapter 380, should N just flip the table?
Before coming to Kanto, N had genuinely imagined what his battle with Dylan would be like. After all, this was a clash between the hero of. Before coming to Kanto, N had genuinely imagined what his battle with Dylan would be like. After all, this was a clash between the hero of truth and the hero of ideals, a battle foretold for 1,000 years. The very embodiment of the dragon gods, coming to blows. Of course, N was well aware of the vast gap between himself and Dylan.
Dylan was simply too powerful. N had even seen the battle where Dylan utterly shut out Leon.
And even if Dylan chose to use his legendary Pokémon in this battle, N felt he could accept that. He just wanted to fulfill this long-awaited fated duel.
And to his surprise, Dylan hadn't used any overpowering legendaries to steamroll him. In fact, Dylan had shown what you might call restraint.
But now, N wasn't sure how to describe that restraint. He had come seeking Dylan's true self, but this truth was a little too real.
Thanks for your hard work.
N muttered quietly as he recalled the fainted Archeops.
He glanced down at the pokeball in his hand, his eyes dimming. He could feel it, Archeops's bewilderment and frustration.
That vile, underhanded, sinister black-skinned lizard had cheated it. If it had been a straight fight, Bird Boss would have smoked that thing.
But that sleazy Salazzle had played dead and sneak-attacked it. Despicable.
You did great.
Rest well now.
On the other side, Dylan recalled his battered Salazzle and praised her with a gentle smile. Then he casually pulled out another pokeball and looked up at N.
Looks like you've been a bit too careless, N. If you're not more cautious, this battle won't end well for you. He toyed with the pokeball in his hand, voice low and deliberate. N. Alder. Iris. Not just N, even the spectators went silent. Like, was that supposed to be a pep talk? I understand. N took a deep breath, trying to adjust to Dylan's peculiar battle style. He'd realized it now, Dylan didn't fight like any other trainer he'd ever faced. Dylan's style was just something else. Alright then. My third Pokémon will be. Dylan gave a small nod and tossed out his next Pokeball. Arbok. Time to battle.
A flash of light, and a massive, muscular purple cobra rose from the ground, flicking its tongue and locking its cold, menacing eyes on N.
It was Arbok. Wow, it's been ages since I've seen this Arbok fight. Eileen smiled with a touch of nostalgia, her thoughts drifting.
This Arbok had been one of Dylan's original poison-type powerhouses. She'd even been there the day he caught it at Empty Moon. With time, Arbok's strength had grown rapidly. Eventually, it became too strong to use against average gym challengers. Unless they were particularly elite, Dylan couldn't justify sending it out. And as Dylan began training teams of various types, Arbok saw less and less screen time.
But its power only continued to grow. Its size, too. Last she remembered, Arbok had already grown over 4 meters, well above the species average.
Now it looked close to 5 meters, with a body thick enough to swallow a full-grown human whole.
A truly terrifying sight. Yet, Eileen and Lily weren't afraid at all. They were used to Dylan's Pokémon by now. Over time, even this cold, brooding Arbok had become a familiar face. Arbok, and muttered. Arbok was a pure poison type. But it could learn all sorts of moves, especially a wide array of biting attacks. However, Anne's gaze flicked to the ground. His brows furrowed slightly. He had originally planned to have Archeops clear the toxic spikes after dealing with Salazzle. But now that Archeops was down. Of the Pokémon he brought today, only Archeops could clear hazards. Klinklang, I'll need you again. After some thought, and sent out his steel companion once more. At least Arbok didn't have corrosion, so Klinklang couldn't be poisoned easily. Oh, back to Klinklang? Dylan chuckled. But Anne, my Arbok's no slouch either. My friend is strong as well, Anne replied calmly. You think your Arbok's strong? My Klinklang isn't weak. Dylan simply smiled and gestured politely for Anne to take the first move. Arbok's cold snake eyes locked onto Klinklang as an invisible wave of pressure swept over the field. Intimidate. Klinklang's body shimmered briefly, its attack had dropped by one stage. Klinklang, shift gear. Anne's expression grew serious as he gave the order. The gears around Klinklang began to rotate rapidly, producing a grinding metallic hum. Steel-type move, shift gear. Move in close. Arbok lowered its upper body and slithered forward at high speed. Within moments, Klinklang's gears locked into place, glowing brightly, shift gear successful. Klinklang's attack rose by one stage, its speed by two. Maintain distance. Gear grind. Anne was playing it safe. He didn't want Arbok getting close. Klinklang floated back and launched its twin gears at Arbok. Steel-type, gear grind. Shadow sneak. Arbok's eyes gleamed black for an instant. Its speed surged as it vanished from sight and reappeared behind Klinklang in a flash. Anne's eyes widened in shock. Too fast. Even with speed boosts, Klinklang hadn't seen that coming. Arbok had deliberately moved slowly before, just to create a false sense of safety. That devious snake. Arbok lashed out, its tail wreathed in shadowy energy. Wham! The shadow sneak hit Klinklang squarely on the head. Despite its high defense, Klinklang staggered from the force. Fire Fong. Arbok wasn't done. It dropped from above, fangs glowing with fire. Gear grind. Anne yelled. Klinklang grit through the pain and launched another gear, but Arbok moved too quickly. Crunch! The attack glanced off Arbok's belly, but it didn't stop the cobra. The fire fong sank into Klinklang, fire erupting on impact. The gear Pokémon let out a mechanical screech, it was in pain. Arbok bit down and slammed it into the ground. Boom! The two collided heavily. Fire Fong was super effective, Klinklang wasn't taking that well. Smoke rose from the point of impact. Anne frowned. Earthquake! Dylan wasted no time. Within the smoke, Arbok's thick tail rose and smashed into the ground. Rumble! The earth trembled violently, shockwaves blasting the smoke away. Klinklang had no time to react. Arbok's tail landed squarely on its head, point-blank earthquake. And pursed his lips, worry creeping into his eyes. Klinklang was weak to ground. When the shaking stopped, the earth beneath Klinklang was cracked and broken. Its gears gave a final twitch, then fell still. Klinklang was down. So strong. Iris stared, wide-eyed, as Arbok slowly slithered back to Dylan's side. That Arbok was terrifying. Winner, Arbok, Alder declared. And silently recalled Klinklang, frowning at the massive, ominous serpent across the field. Something seems off, doesn't it? Dylan asked with a knowing smile. Yeah, your Arbok seems unusually fast, Anne. And trailed off as his gaze fell to the intricate pattern on Arbok's chest.
I've heard of a secret technique from Kanto's old ghost-type master Agatha, a method to alter an Arbok's chest pattern to boost a specific stat. He was referring to the so-called death makeup, a special technique Agatha had once taught. Her unique Arbok could alter its chest pattern before battle, granting it specific buffs. Unlike acupressure, which randomly raised stats in battle, this death makeup was a pre-battle ritual. Once changed, the effect persisted even after switching out. But of course, you couldn't just walk over mid-battle and paint a new design on your snake. Impressive, N. You're exactly right. I did study that technique with Agatha, and yes, Arbok's buff is speed. Dylan confirmed it openly. Since N already knew the concept, there was no point hiding it. I see, N exhaled. No wonder Arbok was so fast and it had priority with Shadow Sneak too. This thing's way harder to deal with than Salazzle, Alder muttered. Typical Dylan, turning even a plain Arbok into a nightmare. And there's still the toxic spikes, Iris added with a frown, thinking through her own potential counterplays. Come on then, N, show me how you plan to deal with my Arbok. Dylan gestured again, smiling with curiosity. N stared at the monstrous serpent, silent. Toxic spikes still lingered. He had 3 Pokemon left, Zoroark wouldn't help much, and his turtle was already badly poisoned. Double Ice Cream could float and avoid the spikes, sure, but if it couldn't handle Arbok's close-range assault, that wouldn't matter. Should he just flip the table and go straight to Zekrom? He hesitated, wondering which of Dylan's Pokemon would come out in response. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as a Kanto gym leader. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.